How to make vodka, step by step. Moonshine Life Recipes. Vodka is a neutral spirit that is generally not aged and can be made from grains, potatoes, sugars, and fruits that are fermented to produce alcohol. Home brewers must take great care during the distillation process to discard methanol, which can be fatal if consumed. Distilling alcohol at home is illegal in some places, such as Australia and the USA. 1. Other countries may require you to register your property or obtain a license to distill alcohol, as in New Zealand and the Czech Republic. 2. Check your local regulations before starting this process. Part 1 of 6. Choosing ingredients. Image titled Make Vodka Step 1. 1. Choose the ingredients you want to ferment in vodka. Vodka is usually made from wheat, rye, barley, corn, or potatoes. Sugar and molasses can also be used alone or added to other ingredients. A distiller even makes an innovative vodka from Pinot Noir red wine. Whatever you choose, it must have sugar or starch for the alcohol to be produced. The yeast eats sugar or starch and spits out alcohol and carbon dioxide. 3. When making vodka from grains and potatoes, you must make a must that contains active enzymes that break down the starches in the grains or potatoes and produce fermentable sugars. Fruit juice already contains sugars, so enzymes that degrade starch are not needed. As with fruit juice, vodka made with sugar purchased from the store only needs to be fermented, thus avoiding the need for a mixture. When already fermented media, such as wine, are used, the media can be immediately distilled into vodka. Image titled Make Vodka Step 2. Decide if you need additional enzymes. Depending on what you decide to do with your vodka, you may need to add enzymes to help convert the starches into sugar. If you are using grains and potatoes, you will need additional enzymes. Grains and potatoes are sources of starch, so enzymes are needed to turn starch into sugar. 4. If you are using malted whole grains, you do not need additional enzymes. Malted whole grains, such as malted barley or malted wheat, are rich in natural enzymes that break down starches into fermentable sugars. If you are using refined sugar and molasses, you will not need additional enzymes because the sugar is already present. Iron-wound or malted, they are heated in water to the gelatinization temperature of the specific starch that is used. Potatoes generally gelatinize at about 150 degrees Fahrenheit 66 degrees Celsius and barley and wheat gelatinize at the same temperature. Theoretically, a mashed potato only needs to be heated to 150 degrees Fahrenheit 66 degrees Celsius. If a low temperature is used with potatoes, the potatoes should be finely shredded before adding them to the water. Enzymes that degrade starch only work at specific temperatures and are destroyed at high temperatures. A temperature of 150 degrees Fahrenheit 66 degrees Celsius is common, but temperatures above 158 degrees Fahrenheit 70 degrees Celsius will result in the destruction of enzymes. The maximum absolute temperature is 165 degrees Fahrenheit 74 degrees Celsius. Part 2 of 6. Making different mashes. Try a puree of wheat. In a 10-liter, 38L metal pan with a lid, heat 23 liters of water to about 74 degrees Celsius 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Add 2 gallons 7.6 L of flaked dry wheat and stir. Check the temperature and make sure it is between 150 degrees Fahrenheit 66 degrees Celsius and 155 degrees Fahrenheit 68 degrees Celsius. Mix 1 gallon, 3.8 L, of crushed wheat malt. The temperature should be around 65 degrees Celsius 149 degrees Fahrenheit. Cover and let stand for 90 minutes to 2 hours, stirring occasionally. 6. Starches must turn into fermentable sugars during this time, and the mixture must become much less viscous. After 90 minutes to 2 hours, cool the mixture to 80 degrees to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees to 29 degrees Celsius. Use an immersion chiller for quick cooling or let it cool overnight, but don't let it get too low below 27 degrees Celsius 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Go for a mashed potato. Clean 9.1 kilograms of potatoes. Without peeling, boil them in a large kettle until gelatin, about an hour. Discard the water and mash the potatoes well by hand or with a food processor. Return the mashed potatoes to the kettle and add 19 to 23 liters of tap water. Mix to mix and bring the mixture to just over 150 degrees Fahrenheit 66 degrees Celsius. 7. Add 2 pounds, 0.91 kilograms of malted barley or wheat and stir well. Cover and stir periodically over 2 hours. Allow to cool overnight at 27 degrees to 29 degrees Celsius, 80 degrees to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Letting it cool for a long time also gives barley malt enzymes more time to break down potato starch. Make a mashed corn. Make a puree according to the recipe for pureed wheat, but replace pre-gelatinized corn with wheat flakes. Alternatively, sprout your own corn over 3 days and mix with it without adding malted grains. A root about 5 centimeters long should sprout from each grain. The germinated corn will contain enzymes that were formed during the germination process. Germination. Part 3 of 6. Fermenting alcohol. Clean all your utensils and prepare the area accordingly. Fermentation is carried out in clean and sanitized vessels, which are sometimes opened, but often closed from the air to avoid cross-contamination. Fermentation usually lasts 3 to 5 days. 8. Fermentation is also possible in pots that have not been cleaned or sanitized, and the distilled product will produce potable alcohol, but fermentation may result in a high level of unwanted flavoring compounds and higher alcohols due to the action of unwanted yeast stains and bacteria. Oxidative cleaning products, such as Be Bright, are available at home brew stores, as well as disinfectants, such as iodophor. Choose and configure your inner tube. An air chamber is a mechanism that will allow CO2 to escape without allowing O2 inches. Lots of 5 gallons, 19L, of stretched puree can be fermented in a 7.5 gallon, 28L, bucket or in 23-liter bottles. The lids can be affixed to the buckets, just like the rubber stoppers perforated in the bottles, but when using a lid or a stopper, never seal the vase completely, as the pressure of carbon dioxide production will create explosive pressure. 9. Always place an air chamber on the covers and perforated rubber covers to avoid explosive pressure. When fermentation takes place in open containers, place gauze over the container to prevent insects and other unwanted things. Strain the mixture or liquid into your fermentation vessel. If a mixture has been made, strain the liquid with a fine mesh sieve of the mixture into its clean and sanitized fermentation vessel. Try to splash the liquid and pour it at a distance, so that it is well ventilated. 10. Yeast needs air, oxygen, initially to grow and start quality fermentation. This is because yeast produces cell material in the form of lipids from oxygen. However, oxygen is not desired after this initial growth stage, as yeast produces alcohol in the absence of oxygen. You can add a sugar solution at this time. Air the sugar solution by pouring it into the fermentation vessel at a distance. If the juice is to be fermented, air by pouring from a height through a sieve or filter into the fermentation vessel. Add the yeast to the fermentable medium. Hydrate the appropriate amount of dry distillers or other desired yeast and add it to the liquid. Stir with a clean, sanitized spoon to evenly disperse the yeast. If using an inner tube, the inner tube bubbles during active fermentation, and the bubbling diminishes dramatically or stops completely when the liquid becomes fully fermented. 11. Keep the fermentation liquid in a room that is between 27 and 29 degrees Celsius, 80 degrees to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, to facilitate good and efficient fermentation. Alternatively, use a heating belt in cold areas. Distillant yeast ferments cleanly, produces a high amount of alcohol, ethanol, and produces a relatively low amount of unwanted compounds, such as alcohols other than ethanol. The amount of yeast used will depend on the specific brand or type of yeast used. Nutrients can be included with the yeast in the yeast package. Yeast nutrients are needed when fermenting a medium with low nutrient content, such as sugar solutions, but they can also improve fermentations when used with nutrient-rich media, such as those made from grains. Collect the wash. Siphon the fermented alcoholic liquid, called a wash, in a clean and sanitized container or in the distillation apparatus. Leave the yeast pellet behind in the fermentation vessel, as it can burn when heated in the still. Siphon washing can also be further clarified by filtration or other means before distillation. Part 4 of 6. Choose a still image. Use a column if possible. Column stills are more complex and sophisticated than stills. They can be purchased or, depending on the static model, built using readily available materials. However, column stills and pot stills work relatively similarly. 13. Cooling water generally circulates through a sealed compartment in the distillation column, causing vaporized alcohol and other substances to condense on the column. This means that this still must be connected directly to a tap or a mechanical pump to move water from a supply to the still. If you are not recirculating water from a single supply, you may need to use thousands of gallons of water to make a small batch of vodka. If the water is recirculated from a central reservoir using a pump, about 189 gallons of water can be used, but the water will heat up and become less effective. Opt for a pot still if you can't find a column yet. Simple stills are similar to pressure cookers connected to pipes or tubes. They can be built very easily and at low cost. Unlike column stills that are essentially vertical columns, marijuana stills can use folded or coiled tubes or pipes that can be submerged in a cooling water vessel. Pumps and large volumes of cooling water are not necessary, but can be used. Use a reflux if necessary. A reflux can still make several distillations at the same time. The packaging between the condenser and the pan allows the steam to condense and return to the puddle of liquid. This reflux cleans up the rising steam and increases the purity of the vodka. Part 5 of 6. Distilling alcohol. Prepare for distillation. The stills heat the fermented and relatively low alcoholic wash to a temperature higher than the boiling point of alcohol and lower than the boiling point of water. In this way, alcohol evaporates while most water does not. The vaporized alcohol, along with a little vaporized water, travels to the column, pipe, or tube of the still. 16. External cooling in the form of cold water is applied to the column, pipe, or pipe, causing the vaporized alcohol to cool and condense again in the liquid. This alcoholic liquid is collected and becomes vodka. Heat the wash in the still to begin the distillation process. Depending on the type of use yet, gas burners, wood burning or electric stoves are all options. A temperature of about 173.3 degrees Celsius 78.3 degrees Celsius at sea level is desirable, but the temperature should be kept below the boiling point of water, 100 degrees Celsius 212 degrees Fahrenheit at sea level. 17. As the wash heats up, alcohol and other substances evaporate and condense in the still water area of the property. Throw the heads away. The first distilled liquid, called heads, recovered from the still will be filled with harmful methanol and other volatile chemicals that are toxic and can be fatal. For 5 gallons, 19 L, of washing, discard at least the first 2 ounces, 60 milliliters, of distillate. 18. It is extremely important that you do not drink this distilled liquid. Collect the body. After discarding the heads, the collected distillate will contain the desired alcohol, ethanol, along with some water and other compounds. This is called body or heart. During this period, if you are using a column with running cold water, the water flow can be adjusted to control the flow and purity of the distillate. 19. Aim for 2 to 3 teaspoons, 9.8 to 14.8 milliliters, of distillate per minute. Higher distillate production results in less purity. Throw the tails out. At the end of the distillation process, when the temperature rises to 212 degrees Fahrenheit 100 degrees Celsius and beyond, the distillation process produces other unpleasant chemicals. These are called tails, which contain fusel alcohols. Tails are undesirable as they contain propanol and butanol and must be discarded. 20. Always be sure to throw the tails out, as they should not be eaten. Check the alcohol content and the purity of the distillate. Cool a sample of the distillate to 68 degrees Fahrenheit 20 degrees Celsius and use an alcometer to measure the percentage of alcohol in the distillate. The distillate may be too diluted to serve as an acceptable vodka, weaker than 40% alcohol, or it may be more concentrated than desired, perhaps greater than 50% alcohol. 21. Vodka is usually diluted before bottling, so the distillate can have a very high alcohol content. The distillate can also be very flavorful and aromatic and requires additional distillations or carbon filtration. Redistill the liquid, if necessary or desired. This increases the alcohol content and further purifies the distillate. It is common to redistillate the distillate 3 or more times to obtain high-purity vodka. Remember that heads and tails need to be discarded every time you distill vodka. The premium brands of vodka go through 4 or 5 distillates, and most other brands go through 3 before the vodka is diluted and bottled. Part 6 of 6. Adding the finishing touches. Filter vodka through carbon. Pass the distillate through an activated carbon filter, such as those available at breweries, to remove unwanted volatile flavors and aromas. Carbon water filters can also be modified to purify the distillate. Dilute the vodka to the desired strength. Add purified water to the distillate to achieve the desired percentage of alcohol. Use an allometer to measure the percentage of alcohol several times throughout this process until you reach the desired strength. Bottle the vodka. Fill bottles using a gravity fill setting and cork or cap the bottles. Label the bottles with custom labels, if desired. Some gravity loads may consist of a 7.5 gallon, 29 L, bottling bucket, with tap, vinyl tubing and a simple spring-loaded plastic bottle. Fillers of wine bottles with multiple spouts can also be used. Enjoy! Moonshine Life Recipe.